the lost city of Heracleion. Somewhere beneath the gray, silted waters of Egypt's Abu Qir Bay, about 30 kilometers north of Alexandria, there is a city, not ruins scattered across a desert floor, not stones half buried in sand. A city submerged, intact in places, resting quietly on the seafloor, waiting. Its name was Heracleion, or Thonis, as the Egyptians called it. For nearly 2,000 years, it was considered little more than myth. Ancient writers mentioned it. Greek poets praised it, but no one could find it. Then, in the year 2000, a French marine archaeologist named Frank Gaudio was scanning the seafloor with sonar equipment when his instruments returned something unexpected, something enormous. What he had found would rewrite our understanding of the ancient Mediterranean world. Part 1. A city at the edge of the world. To understand Heracleion, you have to understand where it sat in the ancient world. The Nile Delta, that great fan of river channels spreading across northern Egypt, was one of the most strategically important pieces of land on Earth. Every ship heading from the Mediterranean into Egypt had to pass through it. Every merchant, every diplomat, every pilgrim entering or leaving the Nile Valley came through its ports. Heracleion sat right at that threshold. It was Egypt's main international port, the gateway through which all foreign trade had to flow before it could enter the country. The Egyptians were deeply cautious about foreigners coming too far inland, so they funneled commerce through cities like this one. Controlled, taxed, monitored. Heracleion was where the ancient world did business with Egypt, and it was not a small operation. The city sat on a network of islands and canals in the mouth of the Canopic branch of the Nile, one of the great river channels that has since silted up and essentially disappeared. Ships from Greece, Phoenicia, Cyprus, and further afield docked here. Merchants offloaded goods. Customs officials collected taxes. Priests conducted rituals in grand temples. It was a place of enormous energy and wealth. The city was also deeply sacred. At its heart stood a great temple to the god Thonis-Heracleion, lord of the gods, patron of seafarers. It was here, according to Egyptian belief, that every pharaoh had to be legitimized before they could rule. The temple was not just a religious site. It was the political heart of the country's relationship with the divine. If Heracleion was Egypt's front door, this temple was a throne room just inside it. The city thrived from at least the 8th century BC. It reached its peak during the late period of ancient Egypt and into the Ptolemaic era. That remarkable stretch of centuries when Greek rulers sat on Egypt's throne and two great civilizations blended into something entirely new. Alexander the Great passed through this region. Cleopatra ruled from a world downstream of it. For hundreds of years, Heracleion was simply one of the great cities of the ancient Mediterranean. Part 2. The Discovery. By the time Frank Gaudio's team began their work in Abu Qir Bay, the city had been beneath the water for over 1,000 years. No one was quite sure how it had sunk. The ancient sources gave no clear account. It had simply ceased to be, and then Gaudio's sonar lit up. What the team found over the following years of excavation was almost beyond belief. Spread across an area of roughly 11 square kilometers of seafloor, they uncovered a city that time had buried but not destroyed. The Temple of Thonis-Heracleion, the remains of a grand harbor, colossal statues, some standing over 5 meters tall, lying where they'd fallen when the city sank. Dozens of sphinxes, steels engraved with royal decrees, hundreds of small bronze ritual figurines still arranged in groupings, as if the priests had only just set them down. One of the most astonishing finds was a tall inscribed stone slab that was almost identical to one found on land at the Temple of Neith in the city of Sais. This monument, known as the Decree of Sais, had been issued by the pharaoh Nectanebo I in the 4th century BC. It outlined the tax rules governing trade through Heracleion and the tithe owed to the gods. Its discovery underwater not only confirmed the city's identity beyond any doubt, it proved that Heracleion was a fully functioning administrative center, a real bureaucratic heart of Egyptian commerce. The harbor revealed perhaps the most dramatic testament to the city's importance. More than 60 ancient shipwrecks were found in and around it, along with hundreds of anchors. These were not boats that sank in storms. They were moored here, trading here, and when the city went down, they went down with it. The sheer number of vessels speaks to how busy this port once was. A constant stream of sails arriving, departing, goods being weighed and priced and moved, languages mixing on the docks. Part 3. How a city disappears. But here's a question that had puzzled historians for so long. How does a great city simply vanish beneath the sea? The answer, it turns out, is geology, and it is a remarkably illuminating story about the relationship between human settlement and the ground beneath our feet. Heracleion was built on something geologists call a river delta. Deltas are formed by sediment deposited by rivers as they slow and spread near the sea. They are rich, fertile, and flat, which makes them attractive for settlement. But they are also, by their very nature, unstable. The sediment that builds them up is loose and water-saturated. And when you pile heavy stone temples and harbor infrastructure on top of loose, wet sediment, something inevitable begins to happen. The weight compresses the sediment layers beneath. This process, called liquefaction and subsidence, causes the ground to sink, slowly at first, perhaps imperceptibly, but over centuries, the mathematics become inescapable. Add to this the fact that sea levels in the eastern Mediterranean have risen by several meters since antiquity, and you have a city with no realistic chance of survival. It is believed that earthquakes may have accelerated the process dramatically. When saturated sediment is shaken, it can behave almost like a liquid, a phenomenon called liquefaction. A building that stood on solid-seeming ground for centuries could, during a significant tremor, suddenly find that ground turning fluid beneath it. Structures would tilt, crack, and slide. The harbor walls would buckle, and the sea, ever patient, would rush in to fill the gaps. There is evidence of a catastrophic event, or series of events, that struck the region around the 2nd century AD. Heracleion had already been declining by then, largely because Alexandria, founded by Alexander the Great just to the west, had risen to become the dominant city of the region. Trade routes shifted. The Grand Temple of Ammonius Gerib lost status as Alexandrian institutions grew more powerful. Heracleion was already being eclipsed when the earth and water finally claimed it. What the sinking preserved was, in a sense, extraordinary. Objects that would have been recycled, stolen, or simply worn away by centuries of use were sealed in mud and silt. The cold, low-oxygen environment of the seafloor is one of the best preservatives on Earth. Bronze does not corrode the way it does in air. Limestone statues, buried under sediment, avoid the freeze-thaw cycles that crack stone. Organic material, wood, rope, textile, can survive for millennia in the right conditions. Part 4. What the city tells us. Beyond the spectacle of the discovery, what does Heracleion actually teach us? One of the most significant contributions is what it reveals about the cultural mixing of the ancient world. For a long time, scholars debated just how deeply Greek and Egyptian cultures had intertwined during the Ptolemaic period. Heracleion offers concrete, physical evidence. The city's temples use both Egyptian hieroglyphic inscriptions and Greek text. Artifacts show Greek artistic styles applied to Egyptian religious iconography. This was not merely a Greek city in Egypt, nor an Egyptian city tolerating Greek merchants. It was a genuinely hybrid place, a product of centuries of cross-cultural exchange. The discovery also clarifies long-debated questions about ancient geography. Classical writers Herodotus, Diodorus Siculus, Strabo mention Heracleion and Thonis as either the same city or neighboring ones. The physical evidence from the seafloor seems to confirm they were indeed the same place, known by different names to different peoples. In a world without standardized maps or universal naming conventions, a single city could wear multiple identities depending on who was talking about it. There's also what the city tells us about trade and economics. The inscribed textile, the harbor records implied by the anchors and shipwrecks, the storage vessels found throughout the site. All of this paints a picture of sophisticated, regulated economy. Ancient commerce was not the chaotic exchange of wandering merchants. It was taxed, documented, and controlled by the state. Heracleion was a customs post as much as a city, a place where Egypt exerted authority over the flow of goods across its borders. And then there are the religious dimensions. The Temple of Amunias-Jareb, with its massive statues, its ritual objects, its sacred enclosures. This was clearly a site of enormous spiritual importance. Votive offerings found scattered across the seafloor suggest that pilgrims came here from across the Mediterranean world. Small bronze figurines, gold plaques, alabaster containers for sacred oils. These are the residue of prayer, of hope, of people standing before God and asking for something. Excavations at Heracleion are still ongoing. Frank Gaudio's team, in partnership with the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, returns every year. And every year, they find something new. In 2021, they uncovered a buried Greek funerary complex from the 2nd century BC. A discovery so unexpected that it shifted the entire understanding of who lived in the city and how they organized their sacred spaces. For over 1,000 years, Thonis-Heracleion was a ghost story, a legend preserved only in ink and myth. But beneath the silence of the bay, the city wasn't gone. It was waiting. Today, these artifacts do more than fill our museums. They bridge the gap between two worlds, proving that even the mightiest empires are at the mercy of the earth. We didn't just find a sunken city. We reclaimed a lost chapter of our own story. Some secrets are buried for a reason. Others are just waiting for the light to reach them once again. In 2022, a tunnel revealed a network of buried ritual deposits that may rewrite the timeline of the city's occupation. There is almost certainly more waiting beneath the silt. What strikes me most about Heracleion is not the gold or the statues or the scale of the discovery, though all of that is genuinely extraordinary. What strikes me is what it says about the nature of geography itself. Cities do not exist in spite of their environment. They exist because of it. Heracleion rose where it did because the river Delta gave it fertile ground and maritime access. It thrived because geography made it the inevitable meeting point between Egypt and the Mediterranean world. And it fell because that same geography, the loose, unstable sediment beneath it, the rising sea around it, eventually reclaimed what it had given. The land shapes what we build, and sometimes the land takes it back. If you found this video interesting, there's a great deal more to explore. The ongoing excavations, the museum exhibitions displaying recovered artifacts, and the broader story of Egypt's submerged coastline, which hides several other lost cities still waiting to be found. Thanks for watching.